All right, welcome to Studio K. I'm Anna, the host and managing editor of Real College Podcast, our arts and culture show here at Radio K. And I'm here, so grateful to be here with Mary Lucia. And I'll let you introduce yourself. But she currently works here at Radio K, which we are so honored. But yeah, I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you, Anna. I have been at the K now, I guess a year and a half, and I will never forget that when I first walked in, I think it was at a staff meeting, and I said, hey, just show of hands, like how many of you think you'll pursue broadcast after school? Not one hand went up, and I was like, oh, well, that's probably smart, but I was like, then what am I doing here? So it sort of changed the perspective of how I approached this job as a program advisor. I thought, at the very least, radio should be fun. So that's going to be my MO. It's just like try things, fail, flop. Just this is the time to experiment and have fun. But I've always kept an ear on the podcast because I've been in broadcasting for 30 years and I just have a lot of respect for it and I love the show.
Absolutely. Yeah, Lucia did kind of an interview, I suppose, with our at one of our weekly meetings. You stepped in and it was like a press conference, except it wasn't very formal. So, but I think everyone loved you. I mean, you're very well known in the Twin Cities, as you know, we'll get into. But I think it's clear that your personality just shines through in all the work you do.
Well, Anna, the cool thing about, I don't have a second personality that I pull out for, radio or my writing or meeting people or talking to my family. It's like this is it, right? So if you like it, that's great, and if you don't, That's fine. Having been in radio for so long, I think my frustration was that it wasn't as important to me to reach a ton of people and to like have tons of people who really dug what I did. I was a lot more interested in a more curated selection of people who really understood me and super serving that audience because I have never understood the mentality of trying to catch or go after the undecided listener. Like, I don't know what I like, at age 30. It's like, if you don't know what you like, it's like, step aside. So I think that my personality, both on air and just in person, is so similar to my writing voice that, again, I don't know if that's everybody's flavor, but we'll see.
Certainly, yes. And there's a point in your book where you talk about how you had an English teacher that would write awkward.
Awk.
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 Not
In
even the
red
full
pen.
word, yes.
It was so humiliating because it was like, creative writing and advanced writing, and the teacher would pass back the paper, so every student in your row would pass back. So everyone could see clearly my paper had red awk written all in the margins. And I remember meeting with her after class once, and her exact words were, you write like you talk, and that's not good. And I thought, all right, I'll see you at my book release show.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the thing to me that came through so much, and it makes perfect sense. Of course, you're a radio DJ, and so why not write how you speak? And I hate that my mind went to this right away when I was reading it. First, I was a couple pages in, I was like, wow, like it's kind of a depressing thing, but there's no way AI could have wrote your book. That's what I thought right away.
Well, that's good. Okay, right? That is good because it would have maybe been better, would have been very different. No, it's all, like I said, it's all me. It's my voice. It's my really dark humor, which, is, again, not everybody's flavor, but I think that for me personally, going through something kind of traumatic, it was a pretty good coping mechanism to find something in that dark place that was funny.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's was going to be my first question here is tell me about the writing process. So, were you writing this during COVID. I was trying to think about, okay, what was the timeline of.
Yeah, no, okay, so here's the crazy thing. So I have always written, I've had columns and different things where there's a finite amount of space. So I do believe that informs my writing, so that it's kind of a, and being on radio too, it's kind of a get in and get out process. I don't meander, if I don't have anything interesting to say, I move on. I mean, that's kind of how I've been conditioned. And so writing for me, this book, started as I have about 14 notebooks in my house, and I'll scribble something down. And during this particular period of time, in which I was dealing with a stalker, I was writing things down, and my hand was moving so fast that it was almost like, I don't know if you've ever seen a Ouija board, but you put your hand on this thing and it kind of moves without your own. I felt like my hand was moving for some other reason. I thought, no one's going to read these notebooks. It's for my eyes only. But when I started to look back at them, I thought, this is a book.
Absolutely. And so for you, writing this book was also part of your healing process.
I'm still in it.
Yeah.
And Anna, I will tell you, it's like, I'm not even entirely sure. There is a certain amount of, I describe it that I felt during this period of time where a stranger had threatened my safety. I mean, this went on for 3 years, and it was at my home, it was in my yard, it was a person with a mental instability that clearly had there were no consequences that frightened him. So that made it extra scary as to what they would do next. I realized that I had lost a ton of power, and I had lost my power to a stranger, which was just a really confusing thing to get my head around. And creatively, writing for me has always gives me a little mojo. And I literally did think, whether it's healing or therapeutic, I'm not sure, but I've always been able to sort of empower myself through creativity. So the writing for me was just as important as just telling the story of how this happened, what laws need to change, how people view stalking as a felony. But yeah, it was, for me, it was the creative process gave me just a little bit of power back.
Yeah. Well, and even now, when you do a quick Google search of your name, I don't know how often you Google yourself, but
I don't, but
now
I
I did. And it's right, it's about
Yeah.
Lucia steps on at Radio K. Lucia wrote this book. It's changing, and I'm sure at one point in time it was not that. It was not focused on your work. It was focused on this stranger who.
That was horrible. It was like, yeah, every time somebody would stick my name in a search engine, a mugshot of somebody would come up. And it was very frustrating. And yay, I'm glad you did Google it, because I probably won't, but I'm happy to hear that it's things that I've done in the last couple of years, so that's good.
Yeah. So let's turn to the book a little bit. So, okay, before that, when you stepped away from the currents, I was wondering, what did you have a plan? Like, what was your goal at the time? I know you were, maybe it was the roots of the book you were thinking about. You wanted to write a memoir, but did you expect to DJ again?
I did. I mean, this is all I've done as I left college and started in radio at 21, and I know that's unusual, so that I've had a professional career my entire adult life in radio, broadcast, and writing. And the climate at the Current, as probably a lot of other places, it was tough during the pandemic. There was 3 of us in the building. It was completely dystopian, and they were saving money on the heating bill and lighting, so it was like dark and weird, and it was like 3 of us that were basically in the studios. And the climate and the culture that was happening around me, it, it felt problematic in a lot of ways, and I really tried my very best to sort of implement any kind of positive change towards some gender equity, pay equity, things like that. And I truly did exhaust every resource. And when I realized they wouldn't change, I knew I had to change. And it was reluctant to leave because I'd been the afternoon drive host for 17 years. And it was very sad for me, but I also like taking a chance that I could be good at something else. And so I thought, I know I have books, not just one. I have a few books in me, and I knew this was
Yes.
the first one I wanted to write. So yeah.
Yeah. And you do DJ here at the station. DJ Lucifer.
DJ Lucifer, I've been
Such a good name.
Mondays 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., which to me has been just a blast because, again, I hear, and I hope you guys hear too, how much people love Radio K. It is, I think some people have sort of a romance about college radio, if they themselves were in college radio or if they just are listeners. A lot of people cut their teeth in college radio that went on to be on air, and I think that people have so much admiration for the station here. I feel really lucky to be a part of it because Sarah, my boss, when she had initially reached out to me and said, "Would you be interested in this job?" There's really only like 3 paid jobs here, and I took it really seriously, and I thought, I would love to because my heart's always going to be. I ain't a manager, so it's like my heart's always going to be with the quote unquote talent, like the on air people. I know what
Mhm.
you guys are going through, and that's where my heart is. So it's fun to be able to have 2 hours where I can just embarrass myself and play crazy music.
And I love in your book that you included your DJ set from the very last shift you did at
Right.
the Currents. You said in the book that you're always trying to say something with the songs you're playing.
Mm-hmm.
Is that still true here?
Absolutely. You can do that, and it's not a big secret, but um, in fact, when I was leaving the Current, and I did all the proper things, I gave my proper notice, and I had to write this statement for public social media, and a couple of the newspapers were kind of getting after me, like for some quotes, like, "Why are you leaving this job?" Blah, blah, blah. And they ended up talking to a former colleague of mine, Andrea Swenson, who's also an author, and they said, what can you tell us about why is Lucia leaving? And she just said, listen to her show. She says sometimes more with the music she picks than she ever says when she's on the mic. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's still true.
Yeah. So in this memoir,
Mm-hmm.
so of course, it's about your experience dealing with a stalker, but it's also about aging parents, music, addiction, friendships, all these things. I'm wondering, how did you balance the goal of wanting to, of course, tell your story in regards to stalking, but also show the other parts of your life? And how did you decide how personal you wanted to get?
That's a great question. It was very conscious on my part that I could not sit down or would not subject somebody to 250 pages of me talking about how terrorized I felt. I knew it had to be balanced with stories about me and about the other things that I've gone through, and some of them are funny and some are not. But it's interesting because when I was sort of pitching the book, they want you to have like this perfect little elevator pitch, nutshell, what is it about? And some of the publishing places said, well, people aren't going to know who you are, if they're not from Minneapolis. And so you need to flesh out a little bit more about who you are in context. And I thought, yeah, I mean, that makes perfect sense. But I also know, like I said, I have a couple books in me. And believe me, there's a lot I could write about. And there was a lot I included and a lot I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the reason that I showed sort of all my flaws is I've never really hidden from those things. I think they make you more relatable. And ironically, the people that listened to me and followed me found me relatable because I was flawed. And it's the very thing that also attracted the attention of somebody unstable. And so it became this incredible, just in my mind's eye, the very thing I was good at, which was relating to strangers, became my downfall.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not know how to navigate. I was like, well, I crack the mic, do I say anything about myself or my personal, I mean, because I was used to being kind of an open book, and having somebody take that away from you and tell you, I'm watching you, I know where you are, threatening you. I didn't know who I was anymore on the radio, so I had to sort of take this step back. I just took like a 5-month leave of absence, but I think being relatable is being vulnerable, and I think there's nothing stronger than being vulnerable.
Absolutely. And I think that comes across so much in the book. And so, yeah, I'm sure it's, yeah, like you said, it's probably empowering to be able to tell your story, as was the process of writing it. So, okay. 1 second here. So, another question I have is more of wondering if what your advice would be for anyone dealing with this kind of situation. If it is something related to stalking, if it's something in their workplace because of their gender. I know a lot of people, sorry, have had asked you advice in
Yeah.
during this process, and at so many points you were like, I don't know, because you're just dealing with it yourself as well. So, what advice do you have? But also, how can I don't know, how can they stay sane in the process of dealing with that and find some support?
I would say, okay, here's the crazy thing. While I was writing this, the working title I had in my brain was Nothing Works. Because I'm not even going to lie. I found there was so little support in the way of law enforcement, just the way the laws are set up about stalking, those kinds of things. I had to learn the hard way for sure, and people have come to me, even when the story went public, and I felt so inept because people were reaching out to me, and I know how much strength that takes to do that. And I could honestly say I'm still broken. I don't know that I can help you. I mean, I hear you, I believe you, but I'm in the process of trying to advocate for myself, and I think ultimately that's what you have to do, because I learned that my work wasn't going to be my advocate, my place of work, my family wasn't. It was some friends, some really good friends, like ride or die, and myself. And so it's so hard for me to hear about somebody who's experiencing something like this. I can certainly give kind of a short list of things, just really general, of like, if you're being um, harassed, if your personal safety is at issue, I mean, first thing you got to do is you got to shut down social media. Everything's got to be on lock. You got to have everything set to private. Don't ever post where you are. I mean, don't even post the background where somebody might be able to guess where you are. I mean, there's some things like that. I wrote about it in the book because on my social media I take tons of photographs of my dogs. And it occurred to me, after years and years of posting wonderful photographs, that their tag, their dog collar, was in view if somebody zoomed in with my address on it. When I realized that, of course, it was like, oh my God, I have to go, now I have to just go back and take everything out. But it's little things like that unfortunately, you learn what to do. And, again, being your own advocate, I wish to God I could say laws are there to protect you. An order of protection will help you. But really, it's being your own advocate. Surround yourself with your community, friends. If somebody won't listen to you, find somebody who will, whether it's a friend or law enforcement.
Yeah, love in the book, you describe the scene of being in the courtroom during the sentencing with your brothers
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, and with your other friends. And I think that idea of chosen family,
Yeah.
all that comes through so much.
Yeah, those people, I didn't ask them. They were, I mean, I have friends. I'm not a friend collector, you know, like I have a couple of really close friends, but the people that, you know, when you're going through something, a lot of times you'll have a friend say, "Is there anything I can do?" And they may mean it, but you don't take them up on it, you know. And I remember one of the women who worked at the Victims' Rights Advocacy, Hennepin County, said, you know, it's get as much support as you can for the courtroom, like literally pack it with people who love you. And it was a really great piece of advice. And I was so surprised then when, you know, like 13 or 14 people in my life said, I'll be there every time. And it wasn't just once, you know, it was like so many times going back and forth to the courthouse. And, you know, we all stood there, took our shoes off, our belts off, my jewelry off, every time to get up that elevator. And I mean, those guys did some heavy lifting for me. And I'll just never forget how much that meant to me, that support.
Yeah. I love the detail of your
Oh,
jewelry.
I'm such an idiot, Anna. Like,
No,
I
it's
am.
beautiful.
Why didn't I take it off before I went? What I would do is I'd show up like this, take everything off, make my friends wait, go through the metal detector, and then put it back on before I got on the elevator. I mean, granted, I think people cut me slack at that time because I was halfway losing my mind, but that is a detail that will always make me laugh, is that those friends huddled around me while I reapplied 10 pounds of jewelry,
Yeah.
my armor.
And the other thing that you changed was your holiday tradition. So now
Yes.
you go to New York every Christmas. How long have you been doing that?
You know, my family is, I had lived in New York and went to school in New York and I consider it kind of second home. And for a while there, my family had this janky sort of holiday tradition that was like, basically, let's start getting loaded at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Christmas Eve. And working in radio, Christmas Eve is not a holiday to radio. So I never got off work till 7 p.m. And they were like, yeah, come on over. Well, anybody who's walked into a party after people have been there for a couple of hours pounding drinks, it's like, oh God, this is horrible. I'm like standing in the kitchen eating, you know, off a plate over the sink. You know, it was so not what I wanted to do. And then topping that with the experience of what I'd gone through, I thought, why am I waiting? What am I waiting for? To have children of my own or to be married or whatever conventional idea? I'm going to start my own tradition. I am literally going to the place that makes me the most happy, and that is New York City. I'm going alone, which people really raised an eyebrow, like, what do you mean you're going alone on Christmas? And it's like, you know, to me, it's the absolute best gift I've ever given myself, as I said, just to be alone with everybody.
Yeah. And the other thing I feel like we haven't touched on yet is your pets. And so it's such a big thing in your book as well. Obviously, that's a point that this person used as, I guess, leverage against you. But what do you love about your pets? And I'm also like, okay, I was trying to keep track
Mm-hmm.
throughout the book
Mm.
because I was like,
I
okay,
know,
there's
there's a lot.
there's pugs, there's
Yes,
cats.
yep.
So what's the situation
The
now?
count now is two pugs, Mr. Cheswick and Enzo, and one cat,
And
Stax.
is Mr. Cheswick, Ch-
Mr. Cheswick
Mr. Ches, is he the one that ate
ate a
the
couch.
couch?
Yep.
Yes.
And
Okay.
he was 9 months old. He was, you know, goofing around under the couch a lot, and I was like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" You know, and then just one day he kind of fell over, and he was like about 9 months old. You know, like this little sausage fell over, and I was like, "Whoa!" So off to the emergency vet we go, and they're like, "Something's in there. Either, you know, something's blocking," and and just in my brain, never thinking like, what was he doing under the couch? Well, naturally, what he was doing, he was eating the entire fabric, the length of the, eating it and swallowing it, the sofa. So yes, he's the most expensive dog I've ever had in my entire life, having paid that vet bill. But he's alive and well and brilliant.
Good.
And Enzo is the newest guy, and he was a puppy when I was writing the book. So I feel like the fact that I was able to write a book is one accomplishment, but the fact that I did it with an 8-week-old dog, that I was literally running around pulling like old COVID tests out of his mouth and like, like pulling extension cords out. I mean, it was just, he's mayhem. But my animals are the most important thing to me because I guess they were the first thing that showed unconditional love. People look for that within maybe a parent, and I didn't really have that. So it truly was the special, and that's who my book is dedicated to, is the Holy Trinity, which is Smudge, Crash, and Lefty.
One of you have a cat too.
Stacks.
Okay, yeah. And do your cats learn from your dogs to eat
My
random things,
My
or?
cats were raised by pugs, raised by cats, raised by pugs. So it's this like this thing that just goes around. So it's like, I honestly think, because everyone says, oh God, do your dogs and cats get along? It's like, yes, because yes, the pugs raised the cats, who raised the pugs, who raised the cats. It's like that's sort of been this whole thing in my house.
That's amazing. So I'm curious about the cover on here. Maybe I'll show this to this camera or something. We'll
Do you
like
like it?
this. Yes, I love it.
I do too.
What's the story behind it?
Okay. So I knew all along I had that title, and it's awkward, and it's not memorable, and it's weird, and it's confusing, and it's too long, and I know that. I got hell-bent on keeping that name because it truly summed up what doesn't kill me makes me weirder and harder to relate to. And I have, I just thought, you know what? I have this vision. I thought, I'm going to fight for that title, which people were definitely against. They were like, that's way too long. No one's going to remember that. I was like, I don't care. I'm going to put it with a photo of me in a pug mask in a 1930s silk velvet dress in my alley with garbage cans in the back. I had the whole thing, like,
You had it in your head, yeah.
in my head. And literally, again, I had to throw a few elbows to get my way, which I guess is also unheard of for a first-time memoirist, to actually get the book cover and title that you want. But, I could be more intellectual about it and actually say, the mask represents the fact that I was sort of a faceless voice to a lot of people for a long time. And within this book, there's a bit of an unmasking, certainly about me and things that I've never talked about or shared as an on-air host. But it's also just ludicrous. I literally thought, what would be insane for someone to walk into a bookstore and see my favorite color based on vintage ashtrays, and that insane photo with that ridiculous title. And it's like, bam. So I could not be happier about it.
Yeah, it's so you. It's
Yes,
perfect.
it is. So good or bad, yeah.
So I'm wondering now, so you have your job here. I'm sure you're working on the next project. But aside from that, like, how are you doing since everything happened?
There's enough distance between when that was happening in my life and where I'm at now. However, I'll tell you about this experience I had this summer. So in South Minneapolis, like after a big storm, all of a sudden, if you own a house, these roofers come out of I don't know where, and they're like knocking on doors and saying, can we get up on your roof and see if you had hail damage? So they caught me one day when I was home, and I said, sure, you can go up and look and see. And so some dude was on my roof, and it was like a Monday afternoon, and then Wednesday morning, 2 days later, I was out in the yard with the dogs in the morning and noticed that my gate on the side of my house was wide open, and I burst into tears, which is not a normal reaction. And when I calmed down and thought about it, I was like, okay, it was that roofer. He just didn't latch the gate behind him. But it brought me, unfortunately, it brought me right back to a place where, yeah, an unlocked gate shouldn't bring tears. It should just be a thing. And so I realized there are things that I do. I still don't want anybody to leave anything on my doorstep.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it's a trigger, and little things like that. I don't pick up unknown phone calls. So some of those things I think I probably do every single day. But yeah, it even surprised me this last summer for me to have a response that was so visceral to something seemingly so innate.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. Um, yeah, and I'm sure it's one of those things. I mean, not to, I'm sure it's a cliche, but how these things aren't linear,
Yeah, they're
and
not.
so
They're not.
kind of never know when
Yeah.
the new way it'll kind of hit you. Um, to end, I suppose, on a different note, of course, one of the biggest through lines in this is your love for music.
Yep.
So, I don't know, I guess, how did that play a role in this process? And now, as a DJ, how do you kind of come back from dealing with these things with your former job?
I believe that. I mean, I think music's the one thing that's been a constant. I'm trying to think of anything else. Can't really think of any particular person that's been a constant in my life. Music has always been, as corny as it seems, like, kind of my friend. And I I think that it can literally lift you. It can also throw you down. It has the power to do a lot of things, and it's been a through line, in my entire life, because I kind of grew up around music and uh, musical family and stuff like that, and it just again, to me, it rock and roll specifically. I am such a consumer of it that it's almost frightening. I should probably be onto a different hobby at this age, but for some reason I am as obsessed and thrilled by a new record by Spoon or whatever Janelle Monáe as I ever was. So I'm kind of happy to know that that was nothing. It wasn't a phase. It's who I am, and it's a part of me, and I'll beat anyone up who says otherwise.
Well, you heard it here. I love Janelle Monáe. Oh my
Oh
god.
my lord, right? I
Amazing.
rode an elevator with her and her band. So, elevator rides are awkward anyway. So, and there was like, I think she was with the Dap Kings at the time, and they had all the black and white outfits. I mean, stunning. And she's stunning. So it was like, I got on this elevator, and it was like maybe we were only riding 4 floors. I was gobsmacked. I couldn't say anything, and it's like I feel like I can kind of talk to anybody, but seeing somebody that, oh my god, yeah, it
It's a
was incredible. Plus, what could I have
fangirl
said that
moment.
she hadn't
Yes.
heard? And they were cool beyond cool.
Ugh. Yeah, that's amazing. That's the other thing in the book too. I love all the,
Oh
you
god,
know,
yeah.
because
There's the random
you've got some
brushes.
great
There's
stories.
some good ones. I've
So,
got some really
and
good
I won't,
stories.
yeah, I won't give anything away. But
Can I ask you a question?
yeah.
How did the book make you feel?
Oh. Well, I think again, even before you had it written in here
Mm-hmm.
of how you write, how you speak, that's the first thing that I noticed.
Yeah.
And I love that style so much. I think it's just raw, and there were genuinely points in this that I laughed out loud. Like, and I'm not just saying that to you. And it's like, when does a book do that? Because, you know, you can, when you're watching a TV show or something like that, like, okay, that's maybe a reaction that's a little more normal.
Right.
But when you're reading alone in your room, it's like, that doesn't.
That is
So, like, genuinely, there were, yeah, there were moments that it was, when you had made a joke about
oh God, what?
the gorilla or something on air,
Oh,
that story. And you were like, they acted as if I talked about, like, Al Qaeda or
yeah,
something.
yes.
And I was like,
Working for public radio, you became a really good dancer, as I said.
yes,
Because you had
yes.
to dance around, and you never knew who you were offending with some innocuous comment about a gorilla in the zoo, and I was victim of that quite a few times, writing apology letters to the Minnesota Zoo. But yeah, and they take their donors very seriously. So.
When Lucia almost got canceled.
Right.
Just kidding.
Right.
But yeah, no, I think that was my first reaction, was just that it's so funny and like witty and just so you.
So really, that means more to me than just about anything, because that's exactly what I would want somebody to get. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, and then of course just again, like, if you go now to, you know, look up your name, there's it's about so many different things. It's not just focused on this horrible thing that happened to you. And so the parts of the book too that do focus more on how you were feeling in those moments, dealing with PTSD, all of that. It's, I mean, I just, of course, knowing you too, it's maybe a different perspective on that as well. But it was just, I don't know. I felt so much for you, just, and how, you know, difficult but also important it was to write this. And so hearing it in your words in a longer, you know, a longer text versus just a short quote, I think that was also really important.
Oh,
So.
that's really nice. That is great. Thank you. I mean, I can't really ask for anything more than that. Just somebody to say, you know, yeah, there's moments where you can laugh out loud, and and it's couched around some pretty dark things, but that's my life too. You know, always has been. So I'm just glad that it was something that you could appreciate.
Absolutely. So if people can find this, when's the release date?
Release date, what is next Tuesday?
Next week. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Next Tuesday, it's in stores. And yeah, the book, there's a couple of different events. There's like a book release at the Granada Theater on Tuesday, December 9th, and then in St. Paul the following night at the Landmark Center. But there's going to be a bunch of things like just blitzed throughout the next month or two, like record stores and bookstores and stuff like that. And I'm really, it's going to be exciting for me to like actually see people who've read it, like you. I mean, I've been alone with this thing for so long, to now sort of unleash it out there and to hear what people think I'm up for it.
Absolutely. And do you have any final words for our listeners?
I would just say that, you know, advocating for yourself is important even when you're not in crisis. You know, learn to trust that inner instinct voice, because it's there for a reason, and it's like a muscle. You need to hone it, and you need to honor it and realize that when your inner voice is telling you something's not right, it's not right. And to advocate for yourself, advocate for other people that you have compassion for, and yeah, pugs and rock and roll.